Welcome to Telewizja Republika. We've been discussing this thing in Poland for more than 14 years. This is a debate that our viewers are aware of, but probably there are not too many people in the Western infosphere who are aware of the questions that we are asking here regarding what happened on 10th of April 2010 when Polish president died over Smolensk in Russia. But a couple of days ago in Finland, a new book about the Putin's World War was published. Its author, Jessikka Aro, is also an author of a groundbreaking book that was published years ago because she was the first Western author who revealed the nature and impact of Russian-designed troll factories on information sphere in the Western world. Tonight, we are going to dive deeper into the things that Jessikka Aro described in her new book. You can join us on rockrachon.com. That's our website. You can leave us your email and we'll get back to you as always with reports from the front lines of the ongoing war against the West. My name is Rock Rachon and this is Rock Rachon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
And tonight, a special guest, a journalist with a long story of revealing the true nature of Vladimir Putin's regime and its assets and activities in Western Europe. Putin's Trolls was the breaking book of Jessikka Aro. Jessikka, welcome to Telewizja Republika. Great to have you on our program. And Jessikka Aro just wrote a book that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. New book about the Putin's World War. And there are some...
Michal, it's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to know that you decided to dive that deep into the issues that, in a way, we are discussing here in Poland for 14 years right now. And you decided to ask the same questions that we are asking here, not answering all of them because probably nobody knows all the answers. But let me start with the question regarding the reasons for which you decided to write a book about Putin's World War. What is the Putin's World War?
Thank you so much. Putin's World War is a collection of methods of both non-military, partly military, hybrid covered cyber warfare, which has been, in some parts of the world, more intelligently designed than in others. The point of Putin's and Kremlin's world war is to take control of the minds of the people and advertise their policies as far as places such as Western Africa, where they have a video troll factory, in places like Berlin, in places like Warsaw, in places like Helsinki. So it's their attempt to take the Western world under their control. That's their end goal.
The common understanding of the nature of InfoWar, and you are a proud warrior in the InfoWar, being a naval fella, as we hear in our program, but the common understanding of the InfoWar is, yeah, this is just a bunch of fake accounts on X, on Twitter, maybe on Facebook, on Instagram, on some other social media platforms. Probably there are also YouTube productions and videos that are being dropped on certain markets when some important tensions are on those markets, the markets that are interesting for Russia. But what you reveal in this book, and you are the first person who published the information about the nature of Putin's troll factory, is so much deeper. The InfoWar, based on what you wrote, is a much more complex entity. So what is the nature of the info war that we are talking about?
It is one part of military operations against us, whether we like this idea or not, but it has been really well planned. It is even taken, it is being designed by the most high-ranking military officials in Russia, and it has been used already far, far away in Soviet history. So they have been really practicing it for decades. And one part of the Russian information warfare is that they deny that there is such. So us in the left are, in the West are being left with basically arguing with each other if it even exists or not. So what I'm seeing, even after being investigating 10 years of Russian information battles and especially their impact in real people, is that even the best Western experts still do not acknowledge that it even has any power in people's thinking. And the worst thing is that the Kremlin's information warfare is specifically designed to target people's decision making as well as behavior. It can be used to ignite people to use violent actions, or it can be used fueling protest potential. This is how the Russian senior high-ranking officials designed it to be. They really have thought well how to address, for example, the protest potential in the population in order to use it in their political gain. In addition, they use information and hybrid warfare to, for example, affect terrorist and extremist groups inside our societies, also fostering different kinds of communities who are willing to even attack our societies from within. And this is only, as much as we know, because the problem still today is in the West that there is no one really investigating all of these operations. Luckily, some journalists, some academic researchers, some even social media activists like NAFO fellas have been looking into some specific information operations. But I have to quote one American official of national security, who some years ago compared Russian information warfare to nuclear warfare. So wow. I think that's a reasonable comparison.
Could you emphasize on that? Could you try to walk us through this comparison? I haven't heard it, and it's very interesting. Before we jump into the specific examples, you mentioned Warsaw, so I'm going to ask a question about the Warsaw. But please explain this comparison. I mean, info war and nuclear war seems to be very distant in a way.
Based on my analysis of what this official could have meant, is that it can be used, information can be used to sow and create mass psychological damage. Also I want to quote a Russian senior official, Sergei Shoigu, who I also quote in my book, who has been one of these top officials of the Kremlin who have been addressing information and hybrid warfare publicly. And he already back in 2015, while us in the West were still fighting over whether there are actually Russian troll factories or maybe it's a conspiracy theory, Sergei Shoigu was already telling the Russian journalists that information is a weapon and mass media is a weapon. And it's a weapon, he said, that can inflict serious damage. So this is one way of understanding of how it can be used in a manner that it is reasonable to compare it to nuclear weapons. And I also want to say that, for example, social media today, with its reach, with its massive audiences, and also with its specific use of targeted audiences, it can be used as a weapon of mass destruction, psychological mass destruction.
Jessikka, your book, your latest book, it was only published in Finnish as for now, so we are basing on the translations made really ad hoc, so those are really the first days after the book was released. But your book starts in Warsaw. For me, it's a personal story, of course, and it's no secret for anyone who had this book in his or her hand. But you are starting from a picture from the very center of Warsaw. You are standing and looking at the monument which is based in the very center of Warsaw, a monument that reminds victims of 10th April 2010, one of the big issues inside Polish politics. And you had time, because we talked about it for the first time back in 2016, almost 10 years, 8 years, to walk through this thing. What is your main takeaway from what you know by now about Smolensk?
One of the most perplexing things to me as a journalist is the fact that it has been so well hidden from the international press, from the international news wires, that Russia has played a massive part in both causing the disaster as well as hiding, swiping under the carpet, destroying the evidence, as well as putting out massive disinformation campaign, influencing people to think that it was actually the fault of the Polish pilots and the Polish commander of the Air Force, as well as basically the President Lech Kaczynski. So these horrible smear campaigns have been, instead of proper information, these campaigns and smears have been spread around the journalistic community, the international community. And you know, I want to take us back to 2016 and 2017. The first time that you told me about this, really my world stopped. I hadn't known back then, having worked as a foreign affairs journalist for years, that you had all of these things ongoing in Warsaw, that you were going through so much traumatic events, new also investigations, false material being spread, this desecration of the victims' bodies, and all of that. I didn't know any of that. It was as if there was an iron curtain between Warsaw and the rest of the Western world. And thank you, Michal. I just want to thank you for sharing that there was more to it than what, for example, our Western medias were sharing. Our Western medias have been sharing the Russian version and Russian propaganda all along.
Jessica, I do want to thank you for the work that you have done. I mean, you spent 8 years investigating, going after all those information. And to be honest, even for a journalist who knows all those, or not all of them, because you are revealing some new information that we didn't know here in Poland. For example, the relations of the Ms. Januszko family. Those are the relations that haven't been known publicly in Poland before, so you are revealing them for the first time. You are using that phrase, the Iron Curtain, as if the Iron Curtain came back after 10 April 2010. And in a way, it was our feeling here in Poland. What you wrote about the way that bodies of the victims of this event were treated, what you wrote about the official explanations, about the investigation that actually didn't take place, wasn't publicly known in the West, despite many attempts to shout out those stories. You are also referring to the issues that we've heard about, even attempts to bribe the scientists who were working abroad in the United States, for example, on those stories. Why it was possible, in your opinion, to try to build this new Iron Curtain over Smolensk case?
One a specific reason, a big reason has been Russia's use of information warfare from the very beginning and the first minutes after the crash. They launched a campaign that I haven't seen before, in which they accused the pilot, they accused the Polish commander of the Air Force, they accused the Polish side, basically about everything in the crash. And I looked specifically Russian state media as well as other so-called Russian free media, and all I could see, all I could find in my analysis that included tens and tens of articles from Russian media was Russian commanders, Russian military leaders, Russian corrupt officials, Russian then Prime Minister Vladimir Putin giving out just lies and strategic communication that would only benefit the interest of the Russia Federation, but not the interest of, for example, the so-called investigation, or not, sorry, let me correct, not the interest of any kind of honest and professional investigation. So that disinformation campaign, which we still witness today, which, for example, includes smearing the journalists and researchers who try to scratch the surface under the Russian disinformation, it has been breathtakingly efficient. But also there has been a big part being played by Western media, who has been using this Russian disinformation as their often only source of information, which they have not been even able to independently verify. But also there is this really tragic and scary layer of Russian / former Soviet / communist / just super scary networks of influence agents and spies who have been trying to shut down the spread of proper information about the causes of this crash.
What made you think that there is a kind of network that you just mentioned? Because this is very, very interesting.
I have been speaking to various different Polish experts and Polish investigators and Polish journalists who have been looking specifically into this matter. And based on their findings, based on what they have looked from, for example, the archives about the communist activities already during Soviet times, same communist spies have been active here in Smolensk, hiding the facts about Smolensk, who have already in the Soviet years been sabotaging the Polish society, unfortunately. And this is all based on findings of Polish really, really talented investigative journalists, and also putting these pieces together and trying to form as full picture as possible. But it's really, this is really based on what originally the Polish journalists have been finding.
I think that you are mentioning, among many other things, also the case that maybe it's worth mentioning, since we are not speaking only to the Polish public, the case of Tomasz Turowski, a man who was present in Rome in the days when late Pope John Paul II was there was an assassination attempt. He was a secret collaborator of the communist secret services. He was pretending to be a priest. He wasn't a priest for real. I mean, technically he was a priest, but he was working all the time for communist secret services. And he also was working for the secret services of Poland, of Republic of Poland, after fall of the communism, and he was present in Smolensk, in Katyn, in 2010, being an official representative of the Polish state. And the fact that he was a secret collaborator of the communist secret services in the years that passed was never publicly known to the Polish public opinion until Cezary Gmys, an investigative journalist, revealed that truth, publishing information about it. It was a shocker for Polish public opinion, since Tomasz Turowski was the person who said as the first that this, what happened on 10th of April 2010, should be a thing that creates peace between Russia and Poland, and he said it in the first hours after what happened. But Jessikka, you've been, and you mentioned today in our conversation, you used that phrase. As we speak right now, you are in a way targeted only because you wrote a book about this certain topic, Smolensk, or actually that Smolensk was part of the topic of your book. What are your thoughts about it? What is the nature of the thing that you are facing right now?
Thank you for asking. It's very troubling, and I have been attacked by people of different nationalities. And it's very disturbing to receive messages that, for example, I am myself a peace propagandist, and, for example, you and some other Polish journalists in my book who I've used as a source, that they're also have been spreading conspiracy theories, as it has been stated. And also, what I really don't appreciate is that some fanatics from Poland, they tag me on Twitter and want to force me into believing that it was actually the Polish pilot's fault, that the disaster was caused by Polish pilots, and this is the only truth and nothing but the truth. So this I really don't appreciate, and that's why I have been forced to really take it secure on social media at the moment and put my Twitter account behind a lock so that I cannot be tagged by all sorts of fanatics who are spreading Russian propaganda and really forcing and pressuring me. It's really scary.
The follow-up question to this goes like this. Did any of those people who approached you through the various media try to question the facts that you are referring to in your book?
No, I have only been faced with very general smears claiming that my book only brings out a theory or a claim about Russian involvement in the Smolensk plane crash, but I have not been receiving any specific professional or fact-based debate about the specific facts that I am presenting in my book. So it's only smears and personal attacks against some of my sources in my book, such as yourself, Michal. Sorry about that.
I do not want to force you to get into details, but our internal Polish discussion is probably not very well known in Finland or in any other states in general. So are we talking about some kind of influence from Poland?
Yes, that too. There are Polish figures who are spreading Russian lies into the Finnish information sphere as we speak.
That's very interesting and sad, in a way. This is not the first time you are being referred to as someone who is talking about conspiracy theories. You mentioned it at the very beginning of our conversation when you revealed, and that was actually the reason for which we met in 2016, because you were invited to Warsaw, to Poland, during NATO Summit 2016 to take part in a panel, side panel to the NATO Summit, speaking about your findings. You were one of the first, or probably the first one, of the journalists in the Western, in the free world, that revealed what is the way that the Kremlin troll factory works like. And back then, when you revealed it, you were also being accused of being a conspiracy theorist. Now, no one doubts that this kind of thing really exists. What's your comment on that?
Let me just quickly correct. I didn't reveal, it was Russian journalists actually who revealed. I was, I guess, the first who started to look into the impact in real people, like how do real people are affected and impacted by Russian social media trolls. So that was what I started to look in a quite early stage. And yes, the reaction was immediate. Actually, I was being smeared by saying that I have made up the whole Russian trolls from my own imagination. The only place where there are Russian trolls is inside my head, which is also full of drugs, according to Russian trolls and fake media. And yeah, it's a very, very common and typical and old-fashioned, but apparently very effective way of smearing the messenger, shooting the messenger, and destroying the messenger's credibility in the eyes of many.
Jessica,
even though I really want to say that, you know, the real conspiracy theorist is actually the Kremlin. They have created so many conspiracy theories to fill the Western audience's consciousness with that it's really unimaginable. And they have also conducted so many conspiracies against Western societies that they should be really investigated and they should be really looked into instead of smearing each other in the West as conspiracy theorists.
Jessica, I got two questions, and one is actually the question of those are two final questions. This is the question of the nature of this idea of info war within the societies of the free world. Because the devil's trick here is for Russia to support all, or actually both sides of each, or maybe more sides of each important social conflict within the specific societies. And the devil's trick here, in case of Smolensk, is that because of the high nature and high profile of the effects of what happened on 10th April 2010, it is quite possible that this case itself was a field of long-standing information warfare attacked and organized also by Russia, what actually made it very hard to try to run a discussion, a public discussion about this thing. What are your thoughts about this aspect of the thing?
Completely. I just completely agree with you. I don't have anything to add.
Because this is, because this is the thing that actually shows that it is very hard. Because if we talk about the similar things in different parts of the world, I know that actually no state was a state that suffered from this kind of thing that we are talking about right now. And sorry to say that as a Polish citizens, but there are many countries in which we are talking about high profile and very tense discussions where we can find the leads of Russian disinfo on both sides of the or many sides of the conflict. Why they do it?
I'm sorry, I didn't get this. I'm sorry.
I mean, we can take a look at, for example, at U.S. As a political market. Let's put it this way, and we can easily find the Russian disinfo campaigns on both right-wing, left-wing campaigns. We can discuss and try to look at the political problems inside European states, and again, we can find Russian trolls and Russian disinfo campaigns on both sides of each political and social discussion that is targeted by Russia. Why do they do it? Why Russia does it in that way?
They have apparently invested heavily in investigating our societies and targeting certain groups that are most beneficial for them to be conducting information operations against, in order to help them to basically gain their political goals. So their political goal can be, for example, causing havoc, causing chaos, causing terrorist attacks, or causing, for example, people's will to go protest in the streets. That's one of the most classic Soviet and Russian methods of information warfare, of having people to rise against their own leaders, trying to topple them so that Russia doesn't have to do it themselves with weapons and physical warfare. This is basically comes down to what the Soviet defectors revealed to the Western intelligence structures back in 1958, that the then KGB leader Alexander Shelepin was tasked with modernizing the KGB, and as part of that, he brainstormed new methods of attacking the West without using physical warfare, which was, difficult and expensive and costly in so many different ways. So he brainstormed with the best agents, and what they came up with was these false information campaigns. Those are used to harm and damage our societies and our security to the very, you could say, state-of-the-art modern ways, especially on social media nowadays. But also, I have to say that Russia is very successful in conducting different media operations, using them as political weapon and political tool. For example, shutting down the intelligent discussion about Russia's own part in Smolensk disaster.
Jessikka, my final question. There is a big discussion here in Poland about the monument that you started your story with. And you are describing it as if you were a journalist who is specializing in the symbolic aspect of arts. What are your thoughts? What did you think when you were looking at the monument in the center of Warsaw?
I'm even now getting the chills. I think it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's very precious, it has so much dignity, and it's beautiful.
Jessikka, I would like to say it one more time. Thank you for the work that you have done. You've been working for 8 years, and you probably do not know yet how important was the thing that you did. Thank you very much, Jessikka.
Thank you, you're an inspiration.
Jessikka Aro, Finnish journalist, one of the first authors in the Western world who decided to tackle this fundamental thing, at least from the perspective of this part of the world.